And Web 2 activities might also involve quite large-scale collaborations. For instance, there was one example where a whole cohort of students were working together to create a textbook on a wiki. So there are quite novel opportunities here for different types of collaboration. Content management. Clearly, if students are posting their work on a host site, they need to ensure that they're that the content is being controlled in accordance with the terms of service or the end user agreements. And when there are possibilities for assignments, the work that students create might be persistent beyond the time of the course that they're undertaking. There are obviously issues about managing that work over time. One lecturer said, I think there's a problem having it done like that, having it published on the web, because things on the web are very hard to get rid of. Students can make it private, but they're still there and they don't have control over it. So there are issues there to consider.
Okay, thanks very much, Jenny, and I hope that all of you found some of those quotes a little bit bringing home some of these messages rather than just, taking the theorizing and the rhetoric, bringing it home to the experiences of people who've actually been trying to do this to the best of their ability. Remember that I said that we had formed 3 perspectives that led to 3 checklists for thinking about the kinds of things you might need to review in your assignments to make sure that you were satisfied you were doing what we might describe as good practice. You've heard about the assessment affordances. Now we're going to tell you a little bit about the assessment cycle, not only designing something with the best of intentions, but actually implementing it with the students, introducing them to it in ways that are helpful, also in the way you mark, in the way you give feedback to the students, and in the way you review your own practice and improve your assignment and your assessment design. So we've got some tools for thinking that we've developed in our field testing now in this vein, and Jenny's going to take you walking through what some of the staff in the interview said about these kinds of perspectives on good practice.
Be taken into account when designing the assignment. Certainly, in many of the cases that we found in the survey in our interviews, Web 2 tools were chosen because they gave students an opportunity to learn about and to learn to use the technology, which was seen to be important for generic and professional skills development. Any comments on that? And the process of implementing the assignment, I think I saw some comments in the chat room earlier about how important it is to support students when they're undertaking the assignment, and this is something that came up as a critical issue in the interviews. There was a real need to make sure that students understood what was expected of them and to ensure students knew how to undertake the task. The amount of support needed can create workload issues. One lecturer said, if you ask students to write an essay, they just go off and write it. You don't have to spend the first 3 weeks of the course teaching them about essays. Whereas if you ask them to keep a blog, which was the case of that interviewee, you might have to do that. And another lecturer commented on the importance of providing exemplars in this context, especially given that students' work might be visible to other students. He said, if the first one they see is not very good, they tend to think that's the standard to which they're working. So it's obviously key to ensure that they have some good examples to work towards. Here are some of the things that people had to say about the process of doing the marking. One lecturer said, the way in which staff were paid wasn't conducive to this type of work, and attempts to encourage change in the way the organisation did that were not successful. He was talking about casual tutors and the time needed to mark assessment like this. another person commented, last year I had them doing a blog every week. The marking was killing me because you've got to mark them and get them back in a week. And another participant talked about having different students from different levels in the same course. So having master students and grad dip students, and said that the different criteria is a bit harder to define in Web 2 authoring activities. He said these differences are sort of formally in place with essays. For example, the number of words you write as a master student is different to a grad dip, but when it comes to creating Web 2 content, it's a bit less clear. Giving feedback, and this is where we found that formative feedback was an integral part of the assignments for many of the people that we spoke to, and there appeared to be many opportunities to provide formative feedback in these assignments. For instance, one lecturer said that her students were given 2 marks in 2 stages, and in the first stage they were given written feedback, individual feedback, particularly with suggestions on how they can improve for the second half of the semester. Another lecturer said that during the assignment, students are given an indication of how they're performing on their criteria with further comments. Another issue that did come up, however, was that lecturers recognised that they needed to be careful about providing feedback in an open forum. For example, if they're providing comments on a student's blog or on the wiki that people are creating, they obviously need to be careful about expressing criticism in that forum. And in some cases, individual private communication would be more appropriate. And certainly it seems that people balance those 2 different types of feedback activities out. And the process of reviewing and monitoring the assignment. This came up in the interviews as a really important thing to do, and it sometimes surprised the participants that they needed to some of the changes that they needed to make when things didn't go quite according to plan. One of the key things that people talked about was the need to provide support for students. So this relates back to the implementation process and how important it is to make sure that students are scaffolded in undertaking the task and in using the technology. It's not just the technology, but actually what's expected of them in the task, which can be quite different to what they're used to in this setting. One of our interviewees said that when he does the assignment next year, he says, I think what we'll do next time is put this assignment as the second one. At the moment, it's the first, and what we're finding is that a lot of the students are having trouble grasping all of the technology, all of the group work, as well as all of the theory in that first round. So there's quite a big learning curve involved. And that reviewing and monitoring process is important to identify those issues. Kathleen, did you want to say a bit about policy?